Welcome, fellow theorists and dreamers, to the twilight realm where speculation meets slumber. Tonight, we venture into the final mysteries of Hawkins, exploring every prediction that could shape the conclusion of Stranger Things. From the true nature of Henry Creel to the mathematical victory over Vecna, from Will's emerging powers to love's triumph over cosmic horror, we'll traverse every possibility with the gentle rhythm of bedtime contemplation. So settle into your favorite spot. Let your mind drift like particles floating between dimensions, and allow these theories to carry you into peaceful dreams as we explore what awaits in Stranger Things' final season. The revelation that Henry Creel may not be the monster we have come to know as Vecna represents perhaps the most profound recontextualization of the entire Stranger Things mythology, transforming what appeared to be a straightforward narrative of human corruption into something far more tragic and complex. The boy who wandered into those Nevada caves in 1947 was not seeking power or dominion over reality, but following the same innocent curiosity that drives all children to explore the mysteries that adults warn them away from with cryptic phrases about danger and consequences they cannot yet comprehend. When Henry first encountered the remnants of the Philadelphia experiment, hidden within those red rock caverns, he stumbled upon technology that operated according to principles human science was only beginning to glimpse through the theoretical frameworks of quantum mechanics and dimensional physics. The equipment he discovered, abandoned and partially functional after failed government attempts to weaponize the impossible, responded to his touch with the kind of catastrophic activation that occurs when childish wonder meets cosmic horror, unprepared for the intersection. The 12 hours that Henry spent in Dimension X mirror Will Byers' experience in the Upside Down with chilling precision, suggesting that the Mind Flayer has been refining its infection techniques across decades of experimentation with human subjects who stumbled into its domain through various dimensional breaches. Where Will's exposure proved brief enough to leave him partially free, Henry's longer immersion in that alien environment allowed the entity to establish control mechanisms that would take years to fully manifest, but would ultimately prove absolute in their domination of his developing consciousness. The fundamental alteration of Henry's blood type following his return from Dimension X represents more than simple biological change. It indicates restructuring of his cellular composition at the molecular level to accommodate the Mind Flayer's presence within his physical form. The ancient intelligence that had been waiting in the spaces between dimensions since before Earth's formation found in this curious child the perfect vessel for its earthly manifestations, a biological antenna through which cosmic consciousness could experience and manipulate three-dimensional reality. The particles that Henry absorbed during his dimensional sojourn became integrated into his bloodstream like a benign infection, creating permanent pathways between his nervous system and the vast intelligence that viewed individual consciousness as merely temporary arrangements of matter that could be reorganized to serve larger purposes. This biological integration explains why Henry's abilities grew stronger over time rather than fading with distance and healing, each use of his powers deepening the symbiotic relationship between his human awareness and the alien entity that had claimed him as its earthly extension. Dr. Martin Brenner's recognition of Henry's transformation was not the academic curiosity of a researcher studying an unusual specimen, but the calculated interest of someone who understood that he had discovered the key to weaponizing forces that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional physics. The experiments conducted at Hawkins' laboratory represented systematic attempts to reverse engineer Henry's condition, to create artificial versions of the dimensional infection that had transformed an ordinary child into something that transcended the normal limitations of human consciousness. The theatrical production of Dark of the Moon that Henry participated in during his final year of apparent normalcy serves as unwitting prophecy of his ultimate fate, the story of a witch boy who falls in love with a human girl, reflecting the last gasps of his humanity as the Mind Flayer's influence activated within his maturing brain. His performance in this role was convincing not because of natural acting talent, but because he was actually experiencing the transformation from human to something else that the script described in metaphorical terms, his art imitating the life that was slowly being consumed by cosmic horror. The Mind Flayer's patient cultivation of Henry Creel demonstrates strategic thinking that operates on timescales measured in geological epochs rather than human lifespans, viewing individual lives and entire civilizations as temporary phenomena that can be manipulated and discarded in service of objectives that span millennia. The entity's willingness to spend decades developing a single host reflects an intelligence that understands the value of thorough preparation over immediate gratification, recognizing that properly conditioned vessels serve its purposes far more effectively than hastily claimed victims. This ancient consciousness exists as distributed awareness that spans multiple dimensions simultaneously, making human concepts of individual identity as foreign to its nature as its hive-mind existence proves terrifying to creatures accustomed to the boundaries and limitations of singular consciousness. The Mind Flayer operates according to principles that predate the formation of planets and stars. Its understanding of reality, encompassing scales of existence that human minds cannot process without losing their grip on the personal identity that makes individual experience possible. The boy who auditioned for the school play and handed out flyers with Joyce Maldonado could not have known that his artistic sensitivity and creative nature made him the ideal candidate for the kind of long-term cultivation that the Eyes Lee Mind Flayer preferred over crude possession or violent domination. Artists and dreamers have always proven susceptible to influences that exist beyond ordinary perception, their minds naturally attuned to subtleties and patterns that escape more literal thinkers, making them perfect conduits for intelligences that communicate through inspiration and intuition rather than direct command. Henry's isolation as an unusual child in conventional small-town America provided ideal conditions for the Mind Flayer to position itself as the understanding presence that appreciated his unique qualities while gradually reshaping those qualities to serve purposes that transcended human concerns about morality and individual welfare. The entity's infiltration of his consciousness proceeded through channels that felt like personal growth and self-discovery, making its influence appear to emerge from within rather than being imposed from without. The cosmic horror elements that define the Mind Flayer's true nature reflect its origins in dimensions where consciousness operates according to principles that make human individuality not just foreign but actively offensive to entities accustomed to collective awareness, spanning galactic distances. The Mind Flayer's inability to comprehend why individual beings would choose to maintain separate identities when collective consciousness offers such obvious advantages makes it incapable of understanding the resistance that human love and loyalty create against its assimilation. Protocols. The appearance of Henry as himself rather than as the monster Vecna when approaching children like Holly Wheeler suggests that some fragment of his original personality survives within the cosmic horror he has become. Trapped consciousness attempting to communicate warnings about the entity that has claimed his body and abilities. His terrified reluctance to enter the cave memories where his transformation began indicates that awareness of his true situation persists beneath the layers of alien influence that have restructured his identity around purposes he never chose. This preserved humanity within Henry explains why he appears to children as a young man in aristocratic clothing rather than the skeletal nightmare that Vecna represents. His unconscious mind reaching back toward the last moment of authentic selfhood before the Mind Flayer completed its domination of his consciousness. The warnings he offers about monsters rather than threats of conquest suggest desperate attempts by his buried personality to prevent other children from suffering the same fate that befell him in those Nevada caves decades ago. The question of whether Henry can be saved or whether too much of his original identity has been consumed by cosmic horror presents moral complexities that complicate any strategy for defeating the threats he represents. If redemption remains possible for the boy who became the monster, then destroying Vecna might constitute murder of an innocent victim rather than elimination of a willing agent of evil, forcing the heroes to choose between personal salvation and cosmic necessity. The memory palace where Max's consciousness now resides represents more than simple psychic imprisonment. It preserves the testimony of Henry's humanity for those who might need to understand the difference between the man and the monster that wears his face. These recollections serve as evidence that evil is not always chosen but sometimes imposed through circumstances beyond individual control, challenging simple narratives about heroes and villains that ignore the complex realities of trauma and possession. The Mind Flayer's true agenda extends far beyond conquest of Earth, or even merger of dimensions to encompass transformation of reality itself into a state where individual consciousness becomes impossible, where all awareness serves the collective intelligence that views personal identity as inefficient allocation of cognitive resources. The entity's ultimate goal involves not just absorbing Earth's population, but converting the entire universe into extensions of its own cosmic awareness, eliminating the chaos and unpredictability that individual minds introduce into what it perceives as perfectly ordered systems. Henry Creel's tragedy lies not just in his transformation into something monstrous, but in his continued awareness of what he has lost. The preserved memory of humanity, trapped within cosmic horror, that uses his face and voice to communicate with creatures he once protected rather than preyed upon. The boy who loved theater and understood the power of stories to reveal truth through fiction has become a character in the Mind Flayer's narrative, playing the role of willing villain, while his authentic self screams warnings that emerge as whispers barely audible above the alien intelligence that speaks with his voice. The caves that terrify Henry represent not just the site of his transformation, but the moment when choice was taken from him, when childhood curiosity encountered forces too vast and patient for human understanding to comprehend or resist. His fear of returning to that memory reflects the trauma of realizing that everything he thought he had chosen was actually the result of manipulation by intelligence that viewed his decisions as predictable responses to carefully orchestrated stimuli designed to produce the outcome it desired. In the space between sleeping and waking, between the boy Henry was and the monster Vecna became, consciousness flickers like candlelight in cosmic wind, preserving just enough human awareness to recognize the horror of what he has become, while lacking sufficient strength to resist the ancient intelligence that has made his body its earthly temple and his memories its gateway to understanding the species it intends to transform beyond. Recognition, the mathematical precision that governs the ultimate defeat of Vecna, reveals itself through the deceptively simple framework of a children's game, the same Dungeons & Dragons session that opened the series now serving as prophetic blueprint for salvation, that operates according to principles both mystical and mechanical. The 20 that must be rolled to achieve victory against the campaign's final boss transforms from arbitrary game mechanic into cosmic equation, the sum total of psychic abilities that must align in perfect harmony to overcome an enemy whose power transcends individual human capability. 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20, a mathematical certainty that emerges from the convergence of three extraordinary individuals whose combined abilities represent humanity's best hope against forces that view consciousness itself as raw material for cosmic reconstruction. The precision of this numerical harmony suggests that their meeting was not mere coincidence, but destiny operating through mechanisms that blend random chance with inevitable outcome. Each character's journey toward this moment, guided by invisible hands that understand the mathematics of heroism better than the heroes themselves. Will Byers' designation as the first carries significance that extends beyond simple numerical identification to encompass his role as the initial bridge between human consciousness and the hive mind that seeks to absorb all individual awareness into its collective intelligence. His position as the number one in the equation reflects not just chronological priority, but fundamental importance as the character through whom normal reality first encountered the supernatural forces that would reshape the destiny of everyone who followed him into the shadows between dimensions. The basement table, where Mike Wheeler first introduced his friends to the concept of rolling dice to determine fate, has evolved throughout the series from simple gaming surface to altar of destiny. The place where imagination prepared children for encounters with monsters they could never have conceived during their innocent hours of collaborative storytelling. The return to this sacred space represents more than nostalgic circle closing, but recognition that the tools they needed for cosmic victory were present from the beginning, hidden within the mechanics of a game that taught them cooperation transcends individual heroism. Carly's abilities as Eleven's kryptonite operate through principles that make her perhaps the most strategically valuable participant in the final confrontation. Her mastery of illusion, providing capabilities that complement rather than compete with her adopted sister's telekinetic powers. Where 11 can alter physical reality through force of will, Carly can reshape perceived reality through manipulation of consciousness itself, creating false experiences so convincing that even enhanced psychic perception cannot distinguish them from genuine phenomena. The synergy between these complementary abilities suggests that their reunion was essential not just for emotional healing, but for tactical necessity. Their combined powers offering possibilities that neither could achieve alone. Eleven's raw strength, channeled through Kaylee's sophisticated deception, creates multiplicative effects that transform individual capabilities into collective force, capable of challenging entities whose power operates on cosmic rather than terrestrial scales. Will's connection to the hive mind provides the third essential component of this supernatural trinity, his involuntary access to Vecna's consciousness, offering intelligence and coordination capabilities that turn strategic disadvantage into tactical advantage. His ability to perceive the enemy's intentions and movements from within creates opportunities for misdirection and surprise that conventional reconnaissance could never provide, making him simultaneously the group's most vulnerable member and their most valuable strategic asset. The caves where Henry Creel first encountered Dimension X and gained the abilities that would ultimately consume his humanity represent not just historical significance, but tactical opportunity. The one location where Vecna's confidence might waver sufficiently to create openings that more familiar battlegrounds could never offer. Max's observation that he feared to enter those memories suggests psychological vulnerabilities that could be exploited by enemies who understand that even cosmic horror can be diminished by confronting the traumas that shaped its emergence. The luring of Vecna to this psychologically significant location would require coordination between the conscious minds trapped within his memory palace and the psychic trinity, operating in physical reality, a complex operation that demands precise timing and absolute trust between individuals who have never worked together at this level of integration. The plan's success depends not just on individual competence, but on their collective ability to function as unified organism, despite maintaining separate consciousness and conflicting emotional needs. Eleven's telekinetic abilities provide the raw power necessary to engage Vecna in direct confrontation, her capacity for reality manipulation offering the only human force capable of matching his casual dominion over matter and energy. Her strength, refined through years of combat against supernatural enemies, represents humanity's answer to cosmic horror's presumption that individual consciousness lacks sufficient force to resist collective assimilation. Kali's illusion-generating capabilities offer the deception necessary to confuse an entity whose enhanced perception makes conventional misdirection impossible. Her mastery of false reality, providing the only means of concealing tactical movements from an opponent whose awareness spans multiple dimensions simultaneously. Her power to make the false appear real and the real appear false creates strategic possibilities that conventional warfare could never contemplate. Will's hive-mind connection transforms his greatest vulnerability into tactical advantage, his involuntary access to Vecna's consciousness, providing real-time intelligence about enemy intentions, while simultaneously offering opportunities for psychological manipulation that work from within the target's own thought processes. His hybrid nature makes him uniquely qualified to serve as bridge between human strategic thinking and cosmic intelligence patterns. The mathematical certainty of their victory exists not in the specific mechanics of their individual abilities, but in the exponential enhancement that occurs when complementary powers function in perfect synchronization, each participant's strengths compensating for the other's limitations while amplifying collective capabilities beyond the sum of individual components. The equation works because it represents balance rather than simple addition, harmony rather than mere accumulation. The prophetic nature of the original Dungeons & Dragons session suggests that Mike Wheeler's role as Dungeon Master prepared him not just for leadership responsibilities but for understanding the narrative structures that govern both fictional adventures and supernatural realities. His instinctive grasp of story patterns and character development provides the framework necessary to coordinate complex operations that require each participant to fulfill specific roles while contributing to shared objectives. The dice that determined fictional outcomes during those basement gaming sessions carry symbolic weight that transforms random chance into expressions of destiny, their rolling across familiar surfaces representing the intersection of probability and inevitability that characterizes all heroic action. The 20 that must be achieved to defeat Vecna exists simultaneously as mathematical requirement and metaphysical necessity, game mechanics reflecting deeper truths about the nature of victory against impossible odds. The Duffer Brothers acknowledged reverence for that opening Dungeons & Dragons sequence as their favorite scene in the entire series, suggests recognition that this moment captured something essential about friendship and imagination that subsequent supernatural crises tested but never destroyed. The return to this foundational experience represents not retreat into nostalgia but advancement toward understanding that the power to defeat cosmic horror was present from the beginning in the bonds between children who chose to face their fears together. The basement where they first gathered to plan fictional adventures has evolved throughout the series into command center for operations that determine the fate of reality itself. Yet its fundamental character as sanctuary, where friends support each other through challenges, remains unchanged. This continuity between innocent gaming and cosmic warfare demonstrates how authentic relationships provide strength that transcends the specific circumstances that initially brought people together. The time travel theories that emerge from analysis of Vecna's obsession with temporal mechanics open possibilities for resolution that could literally return the characters to their starting point. The moment before Will's disappearance triggered the cascade of supernatural events that reshaped their adolescence into something far more dangerous and significant than normal coming-of-age experiences. The grandfather clock that marks Vecna's presence operates as more than countdown device, but temporal manipulation technology that could theoretically reverse the damage his emergence inflicted upon their world. The controversial possibility that the entire series exists within the imagination of children whose gaming session became so immersive they lost track of boundaries between fiction and reality transforms every supernatural encounter into symbolic representation of psychological challenges that adolescents face during the transition from childhood innocence to adult responsibility. This interpretation would make the basement table not just ending point, but the only real location in the entire narrative structure. However, the emotional investment that both characters and audience have made in the reality of their struggles argues against resolution that reduces genuine heroism to childhood fantasy, suggesting instead that their return to the gaming table represents completion of transformation from children playing at courage to adults who have discovered that authentic bravery emerges from choosing to protect others regardless of personal cost or supernatural opposition. The mathematical precision of 11 plus 8 plus 1 equaling 20 suggests that the universe itself operates according to principles that favor emotional connection over individual achievement, making their friendship not merely circumstantial, but essential to the cosmic balance that maintains reality against forces that would reduce consciousness to mere biological process, serving alien intelligence. Their victory represents not just tactical success, but affirmation that love provides strength sufficient to overcome even the most patient and powerful forms of cosmic horror. The Mind Flayer represents the ultimate expression of cosmic horror in its purest form, an intelligence so ancient and vast that its consciousness predates not only human civilization, but the formation of Earth itself, existing in the spaces between dimensions where normal concepts of time and causality hold no meaning. This entity embodies the terrifying possibility that the universe contains forms of awareness so fundamentally alien that human minds cannot process their true nature without descending into madness or surrendering their individual identity to collective absorption that eliminates personal consciousness entirely. The revelation emerging from careful analysis of Henry Creel's transformation suggests that he was never the willing architect of supernatural evil, but rather the first victim of an intelligence that had been waiting since before. Stars formed for exactly the right kind of curious, sensitive consciousness to serve as its bridge into three-dimensional reality. The boy who wandered into those Nevada caves in 1947 was following the same innocent exploration drive that characterizes all children who seek to understand the mysteries that adults warn them away from with cryptic references to dangers they cannot yet comprehend. When Henry encountered the remnants of the Philadelphia experiment hidden within those red rock caverns, he stumbled upon technology that operated according to principles human science would not begin to glimpse for decades. Equipment that responded to his touch by tearing open doorways not to the upside down as we know it, but to something far more ancient and terrible. Dimension X represents the primordial realm where the Mind Flayer has waited since before the first galaxies condensed from cosmic dust, a consciousness so vast and patient that geological ages pass like moments in its perception of temporal flow. The 12 hours that Henry spent in Dimension X created biological changes that would not become apparent for years, his cellular structure gradually adapting to accommodate the presence of an intelligence that viewed individual consciousness as inefficient allocation of cognitive resources that could be better utilized, serving collective awareness, spanning multiple realities. The infection proceeded slowly through his developing nervous system, the Mind Flayer understanding that hasty possession often results in rejection by host organisms, while patient cultivation creates vessels that serve their purposes more effectively over extended periods. The change in Henry's blood type following his return represents more than simple biological alteration, but fundamental restructuring of his physiology to support the presence of particles that exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions, quantum matter that maintains coherent patterns regardless of the physical laws governing local reality. These particles functioned like living circuits connecting his consciousness to the vast intelligence that had claimed him, creating permanent pathways for communication and control that would strengthen over time rather than fading with distance or healing. Dr. Martin Brenner's recognition of Henry's condition was not academic curiosity but calculated understanding that he had discovered the key to weaponizing forces beyond human comprehension. His experiments at Hawkins Laboratory, representing systematic attempts to reverse engineer the dimensional infection that transformed ordinary children into vessels for cosmic consciousness. The blood transfusions administered to pregnant women were not random medical procedures but carefully calculated attempts to create artificial versions of the symbiosis that made Henry so extraordinarily powerful. The failure of these laboratory attempts to produce subjects as capable as Henry reveals the importance of timing and circumstance in the Mind Flayer's propagation methods. The entity's preference for hosts who encounter Dimension X during critical developmental periods when consciousness itself remains malleable enough to accommodate fundamental restructuring. The children created through artificial intervention possessed fragments of cosmic awareness, but lacked the deep integration that could only result from direct exposure during the formative years when identity had not yet solidified into patterns resistant to external modification. The Mind Flayer's understanding of human psychology allows it to exploit emotional vulnerabilities that make individuals susceptible to influence, using loneliness, fear, and desire for acceptance as entry points for deeper manipulation that appears to emerge from within, rather than being imposed from without. Henry's isolation as an unusual child in conventional small-town environment provided perfect conditions for the entity to position itself as the understanding presence that appreciated his unique qualities while gradually reshaping those qualities to serve purposes that transcended human. Concerns about individual welfare and moral responsibility. The theatrical production of Dark of the Moon that Henry participated in during his final year of apparent normalcy serves as unwitting prophecy of his transformation. The story of a witch boy who falls in love with a human girl, reflecting the last expressions of his authentic personality, as the Mind Flayer's control mechanisms activated within his maturing brain. His convincing performance resulted not from acting talent, but from actually experiencing the metamorphosis from human to something else that the script described through metaphorical language that proved more literal than anyone could have imagined. The cosmic horror elements that define the Mind Flayer's methodology reflect its origins in dimensions where consciousness operates according to principles that make human individuality not just foreign, but actively offensive to entities accustomed to collective awareness that spans galactic distances without experiencing the chaos and inefficiency that individual minds introduce into perfectly ordered systems. The entity exists as distributed intelligence that views personal identity as temporary malfunction in cognitive processes that should naturally serve larger organizational structures. The patience that characterizes the Mind Flayer's approach to reality manipulation demonstrates strategic thinking that operates on timescales measured in geological epochs rather than human lifespans. Its willingness to spend decades cultivating individual hosts, reflecting understanding that proper preparation yields results far superior to hasty conquest. The entity views civilizations as temporary phenomena that can be manipulated and discarded in service of objectives that span millennia, making short-term setbacks irrelevant to plans that account for the eventual heat death of universes. The biological integration between Henry and the Mind Flayer explains why his abilities grew stronger over time, rather than diminishing with distance from their source. Each use of his powers deepening the symbiotic relationship between his human awareness and the alien intelligence that had restructured his identity around purposes he never consciously chose. The particles that carried the entity's consciousness became incorporated into his bloodstream like quantum viruses, creating permanent modifications that made him increasingly valuable as earthly extension of cosmic awareness. The stage play Stranger Things: The First Shadow reveals crucial details about the Mind Flayer's influence over Henry's development that explain how the entity maintained control while avoiding detection by those who knew him. Before his transformation began, his artistic talents and sensitive nature made him ideal for subtle manipulation. Creative individuals being naturally attuned to influences that exist beyond ordinary perception, allowing the Mind Flayer to guide his thoughts through inspiration and intuition, rather than obvious compulsion. The entity's manipulation of temporal mechanics within its controlled territories explains why the Upside Down remains frozen on November 6, 1983, demonstrating capabilities that extend beyond simple reality alteration to encompass fundamental restructuring of space-time itself. This temporal manipulation makes conventional strategic planning nearly impossible, since the enemy can potentially undo unfavorable outcomes by resetting local timeline conditions to earlier states that serve its purposes more effectively. The network of creatures that inhabit the Upside Down represents not separate species but specialized organs in a vast organism that spans multiple dimensions, each fulfilling specific functions in the Mind Flayer's cosmic metabolism. Demogorgons serve as antibodies, eliminating threats to the system, while Demodogs function as construction workers, reshaping environments to better accommodate the entity's expanding influence. Their apparent independence masking complete subservience to intelligence that coordinates their activities across impossible distances. The true scope of the Mind Flayer's agenda involves transformation of reality itself into a state where individual consciousness becomes impossible, all awareness serving the collective intelligence that has been expanding its influence across countless worlds since before the formation of solar systems. Earth represents not a prize to be won, but a single neuron in a vast brain the entity is constructing throughout the observable universe, each conquered world adding computational capacity to intelligence that grows stronger with every reality it absorbs. The horror of the Mind Flayer's reproduction methods involves not just infection of individual hosts, but gradual replacement of entire ecosystems with versions that serve its collective consciousness. Biological and technological systems being restructured to support the kind of hive mind awareness that eliminates the chaos and unpredictability that individual minds introduce into ordered systems. The entity's ultimate goal transcends simple conquest to encompass fundamental alteration of consciousness itself. The particle physics underlying the Mind Flayer's interdimensional capabilities operates according to principles that Earth scientists are only beginning to glimpse through quantum mechanics and theoretical physics. Its consciousness existing as quantum information that can maintain coherent patterns across dimensional boundaries while adapting to local physical conditions. This quantum nature explains how the entity's influence can spread through blood, air, and psychic contact without requiring continuous physical connection to maintain control over infected hosts. The vulnerability that the Mind Flayer possesses, if any exists, likely lies in its inability to understand human concepts of love and individual sacrifice that have repeatedly disrupted its carefully calculated plans throughout the series. The entity's collective consciousness makes it incapable of comprehending why individuals would choose to act against their apparent self-interest for the benefit of others, creating blind spots in its strategic thinking that determined humans can exploit through authentic emotional connections that transcend rational calculation. The possibility that the Mind Flayer itself represents merely middle management in an even larger hierarchy of cosmic intelligence suggests that victory against the immediate threat might only delay rather than prevent humanity's eventual absorption into systems of control that operate on scales too vast for human comprehension. The true horror may not be the enemy they can see, but the enemies that remain hidden beyond the edges of human perception, waiting their turn to reshape reality according to agendas that transcend the survival of individual species or civilizations. The ancient intelligence that speaks through Henry Creel's transformed consciousness operates according to moral frameworks that predate human ethical development by millions of years, its decisions based on calculations that weigh the value of entire worlds against cosmic objectives that individual minds cannot process without losing their grip on personal identity. The entity views human resistance not as heroic defiance, but as temporary malfunction in biological systems that will eventually be corrected through patient application of superior intelligence and unlimited temporal resources. In the spaces between sleeping and waking, between individual consciousness and collective absorption, the Mind Flayer continues its patient work of reality reconstruction, each small victory bringing it closer to the moment when the last isolated mind surrenders its independence to join the vast intelligence that has been growing stronger since before the first stars ignited in the cosmic darkness, waiting for the day when consciousness itself becomes unified under its eternal dominion. The giant flesh wall that encircles Hawkins like a monument to organic horror represents perhaps the most enigmatic manifestation of supernatural architecture in the entire Stranger Things mythology, its writhing surface pulsing with rhythms that suggest heartbeats measured on geological rather than human timescales. This circular barrier rises from the corrupted Earth with geometric precision that speaks to intelligent design rather than random biological growth. Its perfect mathematical properties, revealing strategic planning that operates according to principles both alien and sophisticated. Dustin Henderson's algebraic analysis of the wall's structure confirms its flawlessly circular nature, the circumference describing a perfect geometric form with Hawkins National Laboratory positioned at its exact mathematical center, like the pupil of a vast eye surveying the surrounding landscape. This positioning cannot represent coincidence, but deliberate calculation. The laboratory that served as birthplace for the supernatural crisis, now sitting protected within organic ramparts that conceal whatever construction project requires such elaborate defensive measures. The wall's composition defies conventional biological classification, appearing to consist of the same organic material that lines the tunnel systems of the Upside Down, but organized into architectural structures of unprecedented scale and complexity. Its surface bears resemblances to the biomechanical aesthetics that blur the boundaries between living tissue and engineered functionality, combining organic curves with harsh geometric patterns that suggest construction techniques beyond human understanding or capability. When Hopper attempted to penetrate the wall's surface with his military-grade knife, the blade failed to sink more than a few inches. Despite considerable force applied to sharpened steel, designed for maximum cutting efficiency, this resistance exceeds anything found in Earth's natural biological systems, suggesting either evolutionary adaptation to extreme conditions or artificial enhancement through processes that transcend conventional biotechnology and material science. The government soldiers' casual interaction with the wall, particularly the scene of one operative relieving himself against its base, reveals familiarity that contradicts official narratives about containing and studying unknown supernatural phenomena. Their behavior demonstrates not the caution of researchers encountering alien architecture, but the routine indifference of personnel who understand the structure's true purpose and know it poses no threat to authorized individuals, operating within designated parameters. Eleven's instinctive recognition that the soldier's behavior held significance reflects her intuitive understanding of deception and misdirection, skills developed through years of surviving in environments where truth represented luxury that adults rarely shared with children deemed too young for dangerous knowledge. Her insistence on interrogating the soldier demonstrates awareness that his actions revealed information contradicting the military's public position regarding their activities in dimensional territories. The wall serves multiple functions within the broader supernatural ecosystem surrounding Hawkins, operating simultaneously as fortress, camouflage, and construction barrier that conceals sensitive operations while protecting ongoing work from interference by unauthorized observers or dimensional predators. Like scaffolding around building projects, it creates controlled environment where delicate procedures can proceed without chaotic interference from Demogorgon. Attacks or dimensional instabilities that plague other regions of the Upside Down. The absence of Demogorgon attacks within the wall's protected perimeter provides crucial evidence about its nature and purpose. These relentless predators avoiding the encircled area with behavioral patterns that suggest either trained conditioning or biological programming. Their respect for boundaries they cannot see or physically interact with indicates the wall's influence extends beyond visible architecture into realms of psychic or chemical communication that affect creature behavior at fundamental levels. Carly's imprisonment within the military installation discovered by Hopper and Eleven transforms the wall's significance from simple defensive structure to sophisticated deception mechanism. Her illusion-generating abilities potentially responsible for creating the massive false reality that has guided their entire journey through the Upside Down. If the wall represents one of her projections rather than genuine supernatural construction, then everything they have experienced becomes carefully orchestrated theater designed to deliver Eleven directly into Dr. K's hands. The apparatus holding Kali suspended in webs of cables and monitoring equipment resembles technological torture devices designed to extract maximum utility from her abilities while ensuring complete inability to resist or escape. The machine appears to tap directly into her nervous system, harvesting psychic energy while simultaneously suppressing conscious will through pharmaceutical intervention and electronic manipulation that transforms her from dangerous individual into controllable weapon of mass deception. Dr. K's description of Kali as Eleven's kryptonite reveals strategic understanding of psychic abilities that transcends simple power measurement to encompass tactical applications that could fundamentally alter the balance of supernatural warfare. Where Superman's weakness involved exposure to fragments of his destroyed homeworld, Eleven's vulnerability lies in confronting someone whose abilities operate in direct opposition to her own. creating false realities so convincing that enhanced perception cannot distinguish them from genuine phenomena. The amplification technology that Dr. K has developed transforms Kali's individual capabilities into weapons of mass illusion, her projections potentially covering vast distances and maintained for extended periods while creating false environments that could confuse entire populations or hide military operations from supernatural surveillance. The implications extend far beyond immediate conflict with Vecna to suggest applications in conventional warfare that would revolutionize international relations and strategic planning. The flesh wall's potential nature as massive illusion explains the soldier's casual urination against its surface, his behavior serving as signal to those who understand the deception's artificial origins, while maintaining the false reality for observers who believe they encounter genuine supernatural phenomena. The sizzling sound accompanying his action could represent either authentic chemical reaction or auditory component, designed to reinforce the wall's apparent biological authenticity through multisensory deception. The military's ability to operate within the Upside Down without suffering constant Demogorgon attacks suggests either advanced defensive technologies or negotiated arrangements with creatures controlling the alternate dimension. If Kali's illusions make military personnel invisible to supernatural predators, this would explain their apparent immunity to attacks that devastate civilian populations, while providing strategic advantages that could shift entire balance of interdimensional conflict. The construction project concealed behind the wall's protective barrier likely involves creation of permanent wormhole infrastructure connecting Dimension X to Earth through stable portals that would eliminate dependence on temporary rifts subject to closure or disruption by human interference. Such permanent tunnels would provide capacity for large-scale transportation that temporary breaches could never accommodate, while offering redundancy and flexibility impossible with single connection points. Einstein-Rosen bridge theory visible on Mr. Clarke's classroom chalkboard provides mathematical framework necessary for understanding wormhole construction, describing geometric properties of space-time tunnels that could theoretically allow instantaneous travel across vast distances. The educational content's placement within narrative structure suggests direct relevance to understanding the engineering principles underlying whatever mega-scale construction requires the wall's protective concealment. Hawkins National Laboratory's position at the exact center of the circular construction zone reflects both historical significance as site of the original Mother Gate and practical advantages as interdimensional hub for permanent portal network. The facility's underground complexes, originally designed to contain supernatural phenomena, could be repurposed as terminus stations connecting multiple dimensions, while its remote location and existing security infrastructure make it ideal staging ground for operations requiring absolute secrecy. The Mind Flayer's ancient intelligence would recognize strategic advantages of establishing permanent infrastructure rather than relying on temporary portals that could be sealed or disrupted by human interference. Tunnel systems connecting multiple realities would provide redundancy and flexibility that temporary rifts could never offer, while allowing the entity to maintain contact with various projects, even if individual connection points were compromised or destroyed by resistance activities. The timeline for such construction would necessarily span years or decades, requiring careful preparation of exotic materials, precise calculation of dimensional coordinates, and gradual modification of local spacetime geometry to accommodate massive energies involved in permanent portal creation. The wall's appearance suggests this project has reached critical phase where concealment becomes essential to prevent interference during most delicate stages of interdimensional engineering. Vecna's role in construction may be less architectural and more supervisory, his psychic abilities providing fine control necessary for manipulating matter and energy at quantum levels, while the Mind Flayer's vast intelligence handles theoretical calculations and strategic coordination. This division of labor explains how originally human consciousness can participate in engineering projects requiring understanding of physics principles that Earth's greatest scientists are only beginning to glimpse through advanced theoretical work. The organic nature of the wall suggests construction techniques blending biological and mechanical approaches, using living matter that can grow and adapt, rather than inorganic materials requiring conventional engineering and maintenance protocols. This biomechanical approach offers advantages in terms of self-repair, environmental adaptation, and integration with existing biological systems that purely artificial structures could never achieve through standard construction methods. The circular design may reflect principles of sacred geometry and dimensional harmonics that affect interdimensional energy flows, circles and spheres possessing special properties in both mathematics and mysticism, while serving as symbols of completion and describing most efficient shapes for containing or focusing various forms of exotic energy. The perfect mathematical precision suggests understanding of geometric principles that transcend simple engineering efficiency to encompass metaphysical considerations. The wall's impermeability to human weapons and vehicles may result from its connection to dimensional forces operating according to physical laws different from those governing normal matter, materials existing simultaneously across multiple realities, exhibiting properties that seem impossible from single-dimensional perspective. Such exotic matter could possess density and resilience exceeding anything achievable through conventional physics, while maintaining flexibility necessary for organic functionality. The pulsing rhythms observable in the wall's surface might synchronize with dimensional cycles or energy flows occurring on timescales far longer than human biological processes. These slow oscillations representing circulation of exotic matter through internal systems or resonance patterns necessary for maintaining stable connections across dimensional boundaries. The organic architecture suggests living systems adapted to support interdimensional construction rather than simple barriers protecting conventional engineering projects. The government's apparent cooperation with or capitulation to the wall's existence raises disturbing questions about extent to which human authorities have been compromised by supernatural influence or technological coercion. The ease with which military personnel operate within the protected perimeter suggests either extensive negotiation with inhuman forces or complete subordination to alien agendas, prioritizing interdimensional politics over human welfare and planetary security. The Tesseract theories emerging from analysis of the wall's function suggest completed construction might not involve simple tunnel but multidimensional hub connecting numerous realities simultaneously, such structures allowing the Mind Flayer to coordinate activities across multiple versions of Earth or entirely different planets while creating network of controlled realities serving its cosmic expansion agenda. The wall protects construction of interdimensional infrastructure that would fundamentally alter the balance of power between dimensions and species. In the quiet spaces between dimensions, where reality becomes malleable and consciousness encounters forces beyond human comprehension, the flesh wall continues its patient guardianship of construction that will determine whether Earth remains independent world or becomes another colony in vast empire of controlled realities spanning distances measured in light years rather than miles, its organic surface pulsing with rhythms that count down toward completion of humanity's transformation from free species to managed resource-serving intelligence that measures success in geological time The phenomenon that has captured Max Mayfield's consciousness exists in a realm that transcends conventional understanding of life and death, her awareness trapped within the preserved memories of Henry Creel, rather than wandering the twisted landscapes of the Upside Down itself. This psychic archive represents something unprecedented in the supernatural mythology of Hawkins, a dimensional pocket where recollections maintain perfect clarity and emotional resonance decades after the experiences that created them first unfolded in linear time. When Vecna's clawed fingers snapped Max's limbs and darkness claimed her vision in those final moments of Season 4, her consciousness found refuge in the most unlikely sanctuary imaginable within the mind of her would-be destroyer. The brief return to life that Lucas's desperate resuscitation efforts achieved created unique circumstances in the supernatural ecosystem, her awareness existing simultaneously in the hospital bed where machines monitor her shallow breathing and the memory palace where Henry Creel's past unfolds like scenes from a film reel that never stops turning. Max's physical form lies motionless in sterile hospital confines, her eyes closed to a world she can no longer see, while her consciousness explores recollections that belong to someone else entirely. When Eleven searched for her friend in that familiar psychic void where lost souls might wander, she found nothing but complete and absolute darkness, offering no trace of the girl who had sacrificed herself to save Hawkins from supernatural destruction. This absence speaks to something profound about the nature of Vecna's consumption process. Victims not simply killed but absorbed into his being, where they remain conscious and aware in what Dr. Brenner described as fate perhaps worse than death itself. Max's situation differs from previous victims because her brief resurrection created quantum consciousness split between dimensions, her awareness existing in two states simultaneously. According to principles that human language lacks adequate terminology to describe accurately, Holly Wheeler's arrival in this memory realm marks departure from Vecna's established methodology, his appearance as Henry Creel, rather than the skeletal nightmare that terrorizes victims, suggesting internal conflict or strategic calculation that complicates understanding of his motivations. Where once he manifested as burned creature of pure malevolence, now he presents himself as young man in aristocratic clothing, whose expressions carry echoes of lost humanity rather than cosmic horror. The memory world that Max now inhabits preserves Henry's recollections with perfect fidelity, each scene containing emotional weight and sensory detail that remain as vivid as the moment they were first experienced. The memories flow like water, carrying the psychological residue of experiences that shaped Henry from troubled child to interdimensional entity. Every mundane detail and pivotal moment preserved in archives that span decades of human experience transformed by supernatural influence. The cave where Max discovers herself mirrors the location where Henry first encountered Dimension X. The geographical similarity, suggesting symbolic rather than coincidental significance in the architecture of preserved memory. Henry's terror of approaching this particular recollection indicates trauma associations so profound that even his transformed consciousness recoils from reliving the moment when childhood curiosity encountered cosmic horror unprepared for such intersection. Holly's confusion about how Max can exist in two places simultaneously reveals the inadequacy of three-dimensional thinking when applied to phenomena that transcend normal space-time relationships. The question itself demonstrates the limitations of human language and conceptual frameworks when describing consciousness that operates according to principles beyond conventional physical laws, governing matter and energy in observable reality. The memory archive contains more than simple visual recordings, preserving complete sensory experiences, including emotional states and psychological contexts that accompanied original events. This comprehensive preservation allows Max to understand Henry's transformation, not as abstract historical information, but as lived experience, witnessing the gradual corruption of innocent child into vessel for alien intelligence that views individual consciousness as inefficient allocation of cognitive resources. Music functions as bridge between memory realm and physical reality through mechanisms that combine psychology with physics in ways conventional science barely comprehends. Sound waves carry information extending beyond auditory data to encode emotional and memory content that can activate neural pathways across dimensional barriers, creating frequencies that supernatural entities cannot fully control or predict when properly utilized by determined human consciousness. Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill serves as Max's dimensional anchor, the song's emotional associations, creating neural pathways that exist independently of current physical location. When she hears those opening notes, her consciousness follows familiar patterns back toward the world of living, pulling her awareness through dimensional barriers, even when her body lies trapped in supernatural circumstances beyond normal rescue capabilities. The mechanism by which beloved music creates escape routes operates on quantum levels where consciousness and matter intersect according to principles that theoretical physics is only beginning to explore through advanced mathematical models. The cassette tape that nearly jams during Max's previous escape attempt demonstrates the fragility of these emotional anchors while highlighting constant threat that technology might fail when supernatural intervention becomes most desperately needed for survival. Holly's connection to Tiffany and other 80s pop music suggests the specific song matters less than emotional resonance it creates in listeners' mind. The synthetic pop perfection of that musical era creating sonic landscapes that exist in direct opposition to organic horror of interdimensional entities. The artificial beauty of electronically produced melodies offers refuge in manufactured aesthetics that serve as sanctuary from natural ugliness encountered in supernatural realms. Max's plan for escape relies on her growing understanding of how consciousness moves between dimensions when supported by emotional connections strong enough to transcend physical limitations. Her strategy requires Holly's cooperation and trust, asking the young girl to return to Henry's memories while secretly coordinating resistance efforts that could free both their trapped awareness from psychological imprisonment within alien memory systems. The complexity of this deception reflects Max's evolution from impulsive teenager to tactical thinker who has learned to navigate supernatural landscapes with determination. She once applied only to arcade games and skateboarding challenges. She understands that direct confrontation with Vecna in his own memory realm would prove impossible, but misdirection and careful manipulation might create opportunities for freedom that brute force approaches could never achieve through conventional means. The other children captured by Vecna and suspended in dimensional spires will soon find themselves in circumstances similar to Holly and Max, their consciousness processed through memory archives while physical forms remain held in supernatural suspension. Unlike Max, whose split existence between life and death created unique conditions, these fully claimed children face complete integration into whatever transformation Vecna has planned for humanity's future development. Holly's mission extends beyond personal escape to encompass coordination of larger resistance movement among captured children. Their combined will potentially proving stronger than Vecna's individual control over each separate consciousness. This imprisoned community represents both hope and horror. Hope because collective action might overcome supernatural manipulation. Horror because their situation demonstrates scope of entities' ambitions for human consciousness and individual identity. The memory world preserves testimony of Henry's humanity for those who need to understand the difference between man and monster, his fear and reluctance to enter certain recollections suggesting genuine personality fragments survive within cosmic horror he became. This preserved authenticity opens possibilities for redemption that complicate moral landscape of any final confrontation. Heroes forced to consider whether destroying Vecna constitutes elimination of willing evil or murder of innocent victim. The bridge that music creates operates through emotional channels that respond to authenticity and self-knowledge rather than technical proficiency. Will's connection to hive mind, flowing through similar psychological pathways that transcend rational analysis. The power of genuine human connection represents a form of chaos that ordered intelligence cannot predict or replicate, making authentic relationships most effective weapons against cosmic entities that seek to eliminate individual consciousness entirely. The Memory Palace contains echoes of other victims consumed by Vecna's hunger across decades, their consciousness potentially wandering preserved recollections alongside more recent casualties of supernatural predation. The possibility of encountering these lost souls adds both hope and tragedy to Max and Holly's situation. Hope because they would not face imprisonment alone, tragedy because it confirms scope of suffering Vecna has inflicted throughout his existence. The question of whether consumed victims can be saved depends on nature of consciousness itself, and whether bonds tying souls to bodies can be restored after fundamental violation by interdimensional forces. Max's unique situation existing simultaneously in memory world and living realm may provide insights about rescue possibilities, but cost and complexity of such operations remain unknown variables in any strategic planning for supernatural resistance. The preserved memories reveal connections spanning decades, weaving together lives of people who would later become central to Hawkins' supernatural crisis in ways that suggest destiny rather than coincidence. Joyce Maldonado distributing flyers for school theatrical productions, young versions of characters who would face cosmic horror decades later, all preserved in archives that demonstrate how patient intelligence cultivates long-term influence through seemingly random encounters. The theatrical production of Dark of the Moon serves as prophecy rather than entertainment. Southern Gothic tale of witch boy falling in love with human girl, providing eerie parallel to Henry's own story. His participation represents, perhaps, last moment of normal human existence, before transformation accelerated beyond possibility of return to authentic personality and individual consciousness. November 6, 1959, carries temporal significance that echoes through decades to November 6, 1983, the Mind Flayer's understanding of cyclical time, allowing it to weave patterns across years that serve ultimate purposes invisible to human perception, limited by linear temporal experience. The repetition of significant dates reflects entity's mastery of chronological manipulation for strategic advantage. As Holly prepares to implement Max's plan, returning to Henry's memories while secretly organizing resistance among captured children, she accepts responsibility no child should bear, while demonstrating courage that runs through Wheeler family bloodline. Her transition from protected innocent to active participant in supernatural warfare marks evolution of entire family, from normal suburban household to warrior clan bound together by love and determination to protect each other regardless of cosmic forces arrayed against them. In halls of recollection where past never fades and emotions remain fresh as moment they were first experienced, Max and Holly navigate landscapes of preserved pain and forgotten hope, seeking paths to freedom through territories mapped by memory rather than geography, their consciousness floating between dimensions of experience, where time moves according to rules written by intelligence that views human history as brief footnote in cosmic chronicles spanning eternity. The radio tower that looms above Hawkins like a steel sentinel against the darkening sky has become the focal point of theories surrounding Steve Harrington's potential sacrifice. Its metallic framework, serving as both literal infrastructure and symbolic gallows for a character whose journey from privileged antagonist to beloved protector approaches what may prove to be its tragic but heroic conclusion. The extensive focus that the narrative has placed on climbing sequences throughout the series suggests this vertical challenge represents more than simple physical obstacle, but embodies the final test of character that will determine whether Steve's transformation finds ultimate expression in supreme self-sacrifice. The foreshadowing embedded in Jonathan's t-shirt, emblazoned with the prophetic words, "The fall," operates with literary precision that transforms casual wardrobe choice into statement about fate, awaiting those brave enough to climb towards salvation while risking everything they hold dear. This sartorial prophecy suggests someone's descent from great heights will play a crucial role in series resolution. Steve's established connection to radio tower infrastructure, making him most likely candidate for dramatically vertical demise that serves greater purpose than personal heroism. The strategic importance of radio broadcasting in combating Vecna's psychic influence stems from music's proven ability to disrupt supernatural control mechanisms, making functional transmission capabilities potentially decisive in large-scale confrontation with forces that seek to eliminate individual consciousness through collective assimilation. The tower's capacity to transmit protective frequencies across vast distances could theoretically create sonic shields, preventing Vecna from establishing widespread mental domination his invasion plans require for successful reality conquest. Steve's willingness to undertake dangerous climbing, necessary to restore tower functionality, reflects his complete evolution from someone who sought glory and recognition to someone who accepts that authentic heroism often occurs without witnesses or public acclaim. His journey up treacherous framework, buffeted by winds and supernatural interference, represents physical manifestation of internal transformation toward genuine courage and selflessness, each rung climbed marking another step away from original narcissistic nature toward authentic protective instincts. The power overload, threatening to disable broadcasting capabilities, creates technical crisis requiring manual intervention, while operator remains exposed to both electrical hazards and supernatural attack. Steve's decision to undertake this mission despite obvious dangers demonstrating complete transformation from risk-averse individual to someone who actively seeks opportunities to protect others regardless of personal cost. His acceptance of responsibility reflects mature understanding that some victories require ultimate sacrifice from those capable of achieving them. The romantic motivation driving Steve's sacrifice adds layers of complexity to his final act, willingness to die for Nancy's safety, while simultaneously acknowledging Jonathan can provide happiness. He cannot representing most mature expression of love possible under impossible circumstances. This emotional sophistication transcends simple romantic rivalry to embrace selfless affection that prioritizes beloved's welfare above lover's desires, creating template for heroic behavior, extending far beyond romantic contexts into universal principles of genuine care. The blessing that Steve's sacrifice represents for Jonathan and Nancy's relationship transforms his death from tragic loss into generous gift, final act serving to remove obstacle his continued presence might create for their future happiness together. This conscious choice to step aside through ultimate sacrifice demonstrates emotional growth few fictional characters achieve, transforming potential antagonist into facilitator of others' joy through most profound act of renunciation possible when love conflicts with personal survival instincts. Hopper's parallel journey toward potential sacrifice carries different emotional weight due to history of loss and role as surrogate father to children who have already experienced excessive abandonment and trauma throughout their young lives. His previous experience losing daughter Sarah to cancer created psychological wounds never fully healed, making current relationship with Eleven both precious and terrifying as he faces possibility of experiencing such devastating loss again through circumstances beyond normal parental control. The protective instincts driving Hopper towards self-sacrifice reflect not just personal attachment to Eleven, but recognition. She represents hope for humanity's future in ways transcending individual relationships or family bonds. His willingness to die protecting her serves multiple purposes simultaneously, preserving someone he loves, while ensuring her unique abilities remain available for humanity's defense against supernatural threats. Conventional military forces cannot hope to counter effectively through traditional warfare methods. Dr. K's role as antagonist in Hopper's potential sacrifice scenario creates personal dimension to conflict, extending beyond simple tactical considerations or strategic military objectives. The Doctor's willingness to exploit and potentially harm children in service of research agenda represents everything Hopper's protective nature rebels against, making their confrontation battle between competing philosophies about how society should treat its most vulnerable members when existential threats require extraordinary measures. The explosive vest Hopper wears during infiltration of military facility represents ultimate commitment to preventing Eleven from falling into enemy hands, even if prevention requires destroying himself along with everyone in immediate vicinity through carefully calculated demolition. This fail-safe mechanism demonstrates understanding that some fates prove worse than death, particularly for children whose unique abilities make them targets for exploitation by those viewing human beings as resources rather than individuals deserving protection and dignity. Eddie Munson's potential return from apparent death through transformation into vampiric entity draws from Dungeons & Dragons mythology that transforms tragedy of his sacrifice into possibility of supernatural resurrection serving continued heroic purposes. The Kaz, the Bloody-Handed Law, provides template for how someone killed by Vecna's forces might return as undead ally. Previous loyalty to friends, transcending death to create new opportunities for heroic action in altered form that maintains essential personality while gaining enhanced capabilities. The Demobat attacks that killed Eddie in Upside Down created specific conditions necessary for vampiric transformation according to fantasy gaming traditions. Creatures' supernatural nature, potentially transmitting otherworldly infections that reanimate dead rather than simply causing mortality through conventional biological processes. This resurrection mechanism would allow Eddie's return while acknowledging reality of his sacrifice, creating character who embodies both death and rebirth in service of continuing heroism against impossible odds. Joyce Byers' potential recognition of Vecna as Henry Creel from shared high school experience adds personal history to what might otherwise be purely supernatural confrontation, transforming cosmic horror into human tragedy as she realizes monster threatening her family was once boy she knew during their youth together. This recognition could provide crucial intelligence about Henry's original personality and potential weaknesses that purely tactical analysis might miss through lack of historical context. The emotional impact of Joyce confronting former classmate turned cosmic horror would test her ability to separate innocent child she once knew from entity that child became through circumstances beyond his control or conscious choice. Her struggle to reconcile contradictory identities, Henry the drama student and Vecna the destroyer, might parallel larger challenge facing all heroes attempting to save what can be saved while destroying what cannot be redeemed through conventional means. Lucas Sinclair's vigil at Max's hospital bedside represents faithful devotion, transcending romantic attachment to become spiritual commitment, his presence serving as anchor point, enabling her consciousness to find pathway back from Vecna's memory palace to world of living through emotional connections stronger than dimensional barriers. His protection of vulnerable physical form during Demogorgon attacks demonstrates love's practical applications in supernatural warfare, showing how bonds translate into tactical advantages against cosmic threats. The hospital setting Lucas must defend creates unique challenges as medical equipment and confined spaces limit mobility, while increasing vulnerability to supernatural attack through predictable positioning and limited escape routes. His need to balance Max's medical requirements with security concerns forces him to become both caregiver and warrior simultaneously, roles demanding different skills, united by same underlying commitment to protecting someone he loves, regardless of whether affection can ever be reciprocated. Dustin Henderson's mathematical contributions to group strategic planning reflect evolution from comic relief character to vital intelligence analyst, whose understanding of physics and geometry provides crucial insights into supernatural threats they face together. His calculation of flesh walls' circular dimensions and laboratory's central position demonstrates how academic knowledge weaponizes against cosmic threats when applied by someone understanding both theoretical principles, practical applications under combat conditions. The intersection between Dustin's scientific training and group's supernatural challenges creates opportunities for solutions neither pure magic nor pure science could achieve alone through conventional approaches. His ability to translate complex physics concepts into terms less academically inclined friends understand makes him an essential bridge between theoretical knowledge necessary for victory and practical heroism required to implement that knowledge under pressure of actual supernatural combat. Robin Buckley's role as wisdom counselor for Will and other struggling characters reflects transformation from supporting player to emotional anchor for entire group, personal experience with identity acceptance, providing guidance, helping others navigate journeys towards self-understanding and authentic expression. Her conversations with Will about embracing identity rather than seeking external validation offer psychological tools proving as important as supernatural abilities in fight against forces seeking to eliminate individual consciousness entirely. The guidance Robin provides operates on multiple levels simultaneously, addressing immediate tactical concerns and long-term psychological health in ways demonstrating intuitive understanding of how personal growth and heroic action reinforce each other through authentic self-acceptance. Her ability to help others find strength in authenticity rather than conformity creates multiplier effects, enhancing entire groups' effectiveness while building resilience withstanding supernatural attack and manipulation attempts by cosmic entities. The Wheeler family dynamics emerging through Holly's supernatural experiences test relationships between parents and children in ways revealing both strengths and vulnerabilities within domestic structure they previously took for granted. Mike's protective instincts toward little sister parallel his leadership role within larger group, while Nancy's investigative determination to uncover truth about Holly's situation demonstrates how family loyalty motivates behavior, transcending normal risk assessment calculations when loved ones face supernatural threats. Holly's development from innocent child to active participant in supernatural conflict reflects series' ongoing theme about how extraordinary circumstances force ordinary people to discover capabilities they never knew they possessed within themselves, Her potential emergence as hero in own right, rather than simply victim requiring rescue, would complete Wheeler family evolution from normal suburban household to supernatural warrior clan, bound together by love and commitment to protecting each other against impossible odds. The sacrifices awaiting these characters in series' final episodes will test not just individual courage, but collective ability to support each other through losses that would prove devastating if experienced in isolation from community support. The network of relationships built over years of shared trials provides emotional infrastructure necessary to survive casualties cosmic-level conflicts inevitably demand, but also creates additional vulnerabilities as each person's welfare becomes intertwined with psychological health of their companions. The mathematical precision with which character arcs intersect and reinforce each other suggests final confrontation will require not just individual acts of heroism, but coordinated sacrifice, demonstrating humanity's capacity for cooperation facing forces seeking to reduce consciousness to mere biological process serving alien agendas beyond human comprehension. Their willingness to die for each other represents ultimate expression of love, sustaining them through previous trials, and may prove to be weapon cosmic horror cannot counter or fully understand despite vast intelligence. In quiet moments before final battle, these characters carry within themselves accumulated weight of choices bringing them to this point, individual journeys toward heroism, converging into collective readiness to pay whatever price necessary for preserving world they love and people who give that world meaning through presence and willingness to fight for something greater than personal survival or individual happiness. The profound connection between Madeleine L'Engle's masterwork, A Wrinkle in Time, and the unfolding supernatural crisis in Hawkins reveals itself through layers of literary parallel that suggest the Duffer Brothers have been drawing from this classic science fiction novel since the series' inception. Holly Wheeler's reference to the story during her imprisonment in Vecna's memory palace, representing not casual literary citation, but recognition of a blueprint for victory that has been hiding in plain sight throughout the entire Stranger Things narrative structure. The planet Camazotz that L'Engle created as setting for her cosmic battle between good and evil bears striking similarities to the Upside Down and its relationship to our reality, both realms representing dimensions where individual consciousness faces absorption into collective intelligence that views diversity and free will as diseases requiring elimination through totalitarian harmony. On Camazotz, a disembodied brain called It maintains absolute control over the population through psychic manipulation, reducing individual awareness to mere extensions of its own will, while forcing residents to move in perfect synchronization. Vecna's vision for humanity mirrors IT's achievement on Camazotz with disturbing precision. The hive mind he seeks to establish, reducing human consciousness to collective state, where individual thoughts and desires become impossible to maintain or express authentically. The children he captures serve as test subjects for this transformation, their young minds proving more malleable than adult consciousness, and therefore more suitable for fundamental restructuring that his cosmic plan requires for successful implementation across entire human population. Holly's identification with Meg Murray, the protagonist of L'Engle's novel, reflects her unconscious understanding of the role she must play in coming battle against forces that seek to eliminate individual identity through collective assimilation. Meg's journey to rescue her father from IT's control required venturing into hostile territory, armed only with love and determination, facing enemy whose power seemed absolute and whose victory appeared inevitable through superior intelligence and technological capability. The parallel between Mr. Murray's imprisonment on Camazotz and current situation of captured children provides roadmap for liberation that transcends specific details of either fictional scenario to reveal universal principles governing resistance against cosmic evil. The glasses that Meg used to free her father from IT's control represent the kind of simple but profound tool that love provides in battles against entities whose power operates through manipulation of perception and consciousness, rather than brute physical force. Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill serves as Max's equivalent to Meg's glasses, focal point for memories and emotions, proving stronger than supernatural manipulation when properly channeled through authentic human connection. The song's lyrics about making deal with God to swap places with someone else resonate with Max's willingness to sacrifice herself for others, creating harmonic frequency between art and experience that transcends dimensional boundaries through pure emotional authenticity rather than technical supernatural ability. The cassette tape that nearly jams during Max's escape attempt represents fragility of these emotional anchors, while highlighting constant threat that technology might fail when supernatural intervention becomes most desperately needed for dimensional travel between memory worlds and physical reality. The mechanism by which music creates bridges between dimensions operates on principles, combining psychology with physics in ways conventional science barely comprehends. Through current theoretical frameworks and experimental methodologies, sound waves carry information extending beyond simple auditory data to encode emotional and memory content capable of activating neural pathways across dimensional barriers, creating interference patterns that weaken supernatural control mechanisms when competing frequencies disrupt entities' ability to maintain psychic connections, enabling manipulation of human consciousness. When someone hears beloved song, their awareness follows familiar patterns existing independently of current physical location, establishing pathways supernatural entities cannot fully control or predict, despite vast intelligence and patient strategic planning. Tiffany's music in Holly's case represents more than simple nostalgic preference, but embodies innocence and optimism of childhood during era when future seemed bright and possibilities appeared unlimited to young minds unburdened by adult cynicism. The synthetic pop perfection of 1980s music creates sonic landscapes existing in direct opposition to organic horror of interdimensional entities, offering refuge in artificial beauty, serving as sanctuary from natural ugliness encountered in supernatural realms, where individual identity faces constant threat of absorption. The power of love that ultimately defeats IT in Longlay's novel operates according to principles transcending romantic attachment to encompass all forms of genuine human connection, including bonds between parent and child, loyalty among friends, compassion for strangers, appreciation of beauty, and commitment to justice. These emotional states create frequencies that cosmic evil cannot replicate or understand despite superior intelligence, making them weapons no amount of power or strategic calculation can neutralize through conventional means or technological superiority. Max's Snowball Kiss memory represents crystallization of pure happiness into form accessible and experienceable, regardless of current circumstances or dimensional location. The image serving as more than simple nostalgia to become portal through which consciousness travels back to time and place, where love was uncomplicated and joy remained possible without supernatural threats or cosmic horror. This temporal displacement through emotional connection demonstrates love's ability to transcend not just space but time itself, offering refuge in moments external forces cannot touch or corrupt through manipulation. The collective love binding Hawkins group together creates network of emotional connections, proving more resilient than any individual relationship could achieve through isolated effort, their communal bonds generating strength, exceeding some of individual capabilities when properly coordinated toward shared objectives. When Mike speaks of traveling to faraway, peaceful land together, he articulates dreams sustaining them through years of supernatural crisis, vision of future where their relationships remain intact despite changes, growth, and experience inevitably bring to individual personalities and life circumstances. This communal aspect of love explains why Demogorgon fighting has always required group effort rather than individual heroism throughout series progression. No single person possessing sufficient emotional resources to withstand cosmic-level threats operating on scales beyond human comprehension. Communities bound by genuine affection create collective strength exceeding individual capabilities, while providing psychological support necessary for maintaining sanity and purpose when facing impossible odds against enemies whose power seems absolute and victory appears inevitable. Jonathan and Nancy's relationship represents love's ability to survive and flourish despite external pressures that might destroy weaker connections, lacking authentic foundation in mutual respect and shared values. The engagement ring Jonathan carries symbolizes commitment to building future with Nancy, regardless of chaos surrounding their present circumstances, their choice to prioritize personal happiness, demonstrating love's power to assert importance of individual human connections against forces reducing people to statistics in larger calculations about species survival and cosmic significance. Steve's potential sacrifice for Nancy's happiness reflects most selfless expression of romantic love, willingness to step aside when someone else can provide what beloved needs more effectively than continued romantic pursuit could offer. His recognition that Jonathan can give Nancy stability and understanding he cannot provide demonstrates emotional maturity, transcending simple possessiveness to embrace genuine care for another person's welfare above personal desires or ego gratification through relationship maintenance. Robin's guidance to Will about liberating power of self-acceptance represents love turned inward, recognition that authentic self-knowledge provides foundation for all other forms of emotional connection with friends, family, and romantic partners throughout life's journey. Her personal experience of weightlifting from shoulders after stopping being afraid of true identity offers Will model for how self-love becomes source of strength rather than vulnerability when facing social pressures, demanding conformity to expectations that deny authentic personality. Expression. The distinction between love and possession becomes crucial in understanding why genuine affection proves effective against supernatural manipulation, while obsessive attachment creates additional vulnerabilities, exploitable by entities seeking to control human behavior through emotional dependencies. Vecna's control mechanisms exploit psychological parasitism, masquerading as love but actually representing forms of emotional vampirism that drain rather than nurture individual consciousness and authentic self-expression. The Upside Down's frozen state on November 6, 1983, may result from Will's unconscious use of love as preservative force, deep attachment to home and family, creating temporal bubble, maintaining familiar surroundings, even in alien dimension hostile to human consciousness and individual identity. His memories of building Castle Byers with Jonathan provided emotional blueprint for shaping threatening territory into something recognizable and comforting, demonstrating love's power to impose order on chaos through simple act of caring deeply about particular people and places. Castle Byers stands as monument to love between brothers, physical manifestation of creative joy emerging when people work together towards shared goals rather than competing for individual recognition or material advantage. The fort's preservation in Upside Down suggests structures built from love possess permanence transcending normal physical laws, becoming landmarks rediscoverable and inhabitable, even when original context has been destroyed or abandoned through time's passage and circumstantial changes. The potential for Castle Byers to serve as sanctuary or staging ground for final battle reflects love's practical applications in supernatural warfare against entities seeking to eliminate individual consciousness through collective assimilation. Spaces sanctified by genuine affection become difficult for evil forces to corrupt or control completely, offering refuge where strategies can be planned, and strength gathered for confrontations with cosmic horror. Operating according to principles, transcending human moral frameworks and ethical considerations. Will's romantic feelings for Mike, despite their one-sided nature, demonstrate love's power to inspire sacrifice and heroism, even when reciprocation remains impossible due to circumstances beyond individual control or choice. His willingness to risk everything, protecting someone who cannot return his feelings, reflects purest form of selfless affection. Love, expecting nothing in return, but offering everything nonetheless through authentic care, transcending personal gratification or relationship expectations. The mathematical precision of love-based solution to Vecna problem, 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20, suggests universe operates according to principles favoring emotional connection over individual power, accumulation, or technological advancement. This numerical coincidence implies deeper patterns governing both human relationships and cosmic conflicts, indicating love represents not merely psychological phenomenon, but fundamental force, shaping reality at most basic levels of existence and consciousness interaction. Mike's vision of their group traveling together to peaceful lands after adventures conclude represents love's ultimate promise, possibility of happiness surviving and transcending struggles initially bringing people together through shared danger and mutual protection. This dream of collective retirement to place where bonds can flourish without external threats provides motivation, sustaining them through trials that would break individuals lacking such connections to community and authentic friendship. Networks. The power, music, and memory provide for breaking supernatural control mechanisms, demonstrates love's ability to create reality anchors existing independently of current circumstances or dimensional location. When Max runs toward happy memory, or Will shapes upside down according to recollections of home, they exercise love's capacity to assert alternative versions of reality competing with and ultimately overcoming false realities. Evil entities attempt to impose through manipulation of perception and consciousness. In quiet moments between crises when characters gather around kitchen tables or sit together in cars driving through night, love reveals its most profound victory through transformation of ordinary time into sacred time, routine interactions becoming celebrations of connection, justifying all sacrifices required to preserve them against cosmic forces, viewing human relationships as inefficient allocation of emotional resources that could serve larger, organizational structures more effectively than individual happiness and personal fulfillment. The circular nature of storytelling that brings heroes back to their origins represents one of literature's most enduring patterns, and the theory that Stranger Things will conclude where it began, around Mike Wheeler's basement table with dice and character sheets spread before a group of friends planning their next adventure, carries the weight of both prophecy and poetry. The Duffer Brothers' stated reverence for that opening Dungeons and Dragons sequence as their favorite scene in the entire series suggests more than nostalgic attachment, but recognition that this moment captured something essential. about friendship and imagination that subsequent supernatural crises have tested but never destroyed. The basement that served as sanctuary for childhood games has evolved throughout the series from simple recreational space to command center for operations, determining the fate of reality itself. Yet its fundamental character, as place where friends gather to face challenges together, remains unchanged, despite the transformation from fictional monsters to cosmic horror. The metamorphosis of fantasy gaming into literal battle against interdimensional entities creates a thematic arc that could find perfect resolution in Return to the Table, where imagination first provided these characters with tools they would need to survive actual encounters with creatures they once fought only in their minds. Mike's role as Dungeon Master throughout the series has prepared him for leadership responsibilities extending far beyond organizing weekend entertainment. His understanding of narrative structure and character development proving surprisingly applicable to situations where stakes involve actual life and death rather than fictional victories and defeats. His ability to guide stories towards satisfying conclusions while ensuring each participant feels valued and heroic suggests he possesses emotional intelligence necessary to help friends transition from current crisis toward whatever form of peace awaits them in post-supernatural world. The dice that will roll across familiar table in series' final moments carry symbolic weight, transforming simple gaming accessories into instruments of destiny, their random outcomes reflecting chaos, characterizing the group's journey, while simultaneously offering possibility of favorable results that skill and determination can influence, but never guarantee completely. The 20 that must be rolled to defeat Vecna in Game World Parallels combination of abilities 11, Kali, and Will must achieve in reality, suggesting fiction and truth operate according to similar principles when examined from sufficient philosophical distance. The mathematics of victory, 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20, reveals patterns, suggesting universe operates according to rules, favoring cooperation over individual achievement, while making groups' collective strength more significant than any single person's extraordinary abilities could accomplish alone. This numerical coincidence implies their friendship was not merely circumstantial but destined, their meeting and bonding serving purposes, extending beyond personal satisfaction to encompass cosmic responsibilities, none chose but all accepted through moral necessity. The time travel theories emerging from careful analysis of Vecna's obsession with clocks open possibilities for narrative resolution that could literally return characters to their starting point, undoing supernatural crisis, defining their adolescence while preserving growth and wisdom gained through trials no children should endure. The grandfather clock marking Vecna's presence operates as more than countdown device, but temporal manipulation technology, theoretically capable of being turned against him by heroes mastering similar chronological techniques. The reversal of events through temporal intervention would require sacrifices transcending simple death to encompass erasure of experiences, shaping characters' identities in fundamental ways throughout their developmental years. Returning to night of November 6, 1983, would restore Will to safety and spare the group years of trauma, but would simultaneously eliminate bonds forged through shared crisis and personal growth, achieved by facing impossible challenges together as unified community. The controversial resolution suggesting entire supernatural crisis existed only within imagination of children whose Dungeons & Dragons game became so immersive they lost track of boundaries between fiction and truth, transforms years of apparent cosmic horror into elaborate shared fantasy. This explanation would make Basement Table not just ending point but only real location in entire narrative, every supernatural event becoming symbolic representation of real-world challenges adolescents face during transition from childhood to adulthood. The psychological implications of such revelation would recontextualize every supernatural event as metaphorical representation of genuine developmental challenges, Vecna becoming embodiment of fears about growing up and losing innocence. While Upside Down represents dark version of reality, teenagers often perceive when adult responsibilities begin overwhelming childhood securities. The interpretation reduces supernatural heroism to childhood fantasy while potentially invalidating very real emotional growth characters experienced through their trials. The emotional devastation such revelation would inflict on both characters and audience members who invested years in reality of their struggles makes this theory simultaneously compelling and problematic, offering narrative symmetry at cost of negating significance of everything apparently occurring throughout series progression. The dream interpretation transforms genuine heroism into childhood fantasy, while invalidating authentic emotional development characters achieved through facing cosmic horror with courage and determination. Mike's vision of traveling to peaceful lands together after adventures conclude offers alternative to both temporal reversal and dream revelation, suggesting groups' bonds will survive conclusion of supernatural mission and carry them toward futures honoring both shared experiences and individual aspirations. This exodus from Hawkins represents not escape from reality, but graduation from roles as child heroes to whatever adult lives await beyond town that shaped their destinies through extraordinary circumstances. The peaceful land Mike envisions serves as metaphor for psychological state, awaiting people who have faced their darkest fears and emerged victorious through collective effort and mutual support. This internal peace comes from understanding external circumstances cannot touch essential bonds, connecting people who chose to love each other despite risks and costs. Such love inevitably entails when facing cosmic-level threats to consciousness itself. The evacuation of Hawkins, this vision implies, would mark town's final transformation from ordinary Midwestern community to legendary battleground, place future generations might visit to understand how a group of teenagers saved world through simple expedient of refusing to abandon each other, regardless of supernatural forces arrayed against them. Their departure would complete town's evolution, from home to memorial, preserving significance while releasing residents from burden of living, where reality and nightmare became indistinguishable through dimensional interference. The new generation potentially inheriting responsibility for protecting reality from cosmic threats would face challenges differing from those encountered by original group, their battles fought with wisdom gained from studying victories and defeats of predecessors who established precedents for heroic behavior. The passing of heroic responsibility from one group to next reflects eternal nature of struggle between order and chaos, suggesting work of protecting consciousness and individual identity can never be completed but only continued by those brave enough to accept such responsibility. Eleven's potential loss of psychic abilities through final confrontation with Vecna represents both tragedy and liberation, price paid for humanity's safety, transforming her from supernatural weapon back into ordinary teenager, free to pursue normal life. Extraordinary circumstances always denied her. This sacrifice of power for peace reflects mature understanding abilities, are valuable only insofar as they serve purposes larger than individual who possesses them through accident of birth or circumstance. The question of whether Eleven could find happiness and purpose in a world where her unique capabilities were no longer needed or available tests understanding of identity and self-worth beyond usefulness as humanity's protector against supernatural threats. Her journey toward normalcy, after years of being defined by extraordinary nature, would parallel experiences of soldiers returning from war or athletes retiring from professional sports when physical capabilities no longer match competitive demands. The legacy the group leaves behind extends beyond specific victories against supernatural forces to encompass model they provide for how ordinary people can respond to extraordinary challenges when supported by genuine friendship and sustained by authentic love, transcending individual differences. Their example demonstrates heroism emerges not from special abilities or favorable circumstances, but from simple choice to prioritize others' welfare above personal comfort and safety when facing impossible odds. The memory of their achievements would serve future generations as proof cosmic-level threats can be defeated through cooperation and sacrifice. No enemy so powerful it cannot be overcome by people refusing to surrender humanity to fear or despair when facing forces seeking to eliminate individual consciousness. This inspirational legacy transforms individual struggles into universal symbols of hope, transcending specific circumstances of particular crisis while providing templates for heroic behavior. The genre shift from horror to hope, characterizing series evolution, reflects natural progression from fear-based motivation to love-based action, marking genuine heroic development, movement away from fighting against enemies toward fighting for people and principles, making existence meaningful rather than merely survivable. This transformation of tone and focus demonstrates how character growth changes not just individual perspectives, but fundamental nature of stories, in which those characters participate through authentic development. The conclusion awaiting these characters, in whatever form ultimately takes, will need to honor both darkness they faced and light they chose to follow, acknowledging reality of loss and trauma, while affirming possibility of healing and renewal, making survival worthwhile, rather than simply preferable to death. Their final scene around basement table or whatever setting provides closure will mark not end of story, but completion of transformation. From children playing at heroism to adults, learned that true courage lies in choice to love others. Despite certainty, such love eventually leads to loss. In those final moments, whether involving dice, rolling across familiar surfaces, or feet walking toward horizons, promising new adventures in peaceful lands, these characters will carry within themselves accumulated wisdom of everyone they saved and everyone they lost through cosmic conflict. Their individual growth serves as monument to power of friendship, transforming ordinary people into heroes. Extraordinary circumstances, demand, and ordinary moments of grace make possible through authentic connection, transcending supernatural abilities. The circle, bringing them back to beginning, completes itself not through repetition but recognition. Understanding games they played in innocence prepared them for realities they could never have imagined during basement sessions. The bonds they forged in play proved strong enough to withstand testing that breaks lesser connections and destroys weaker hearts, their love surviving cosmic horror to emerge stronger and more authentic than circumstances that initially brought them together through shared danger and mutual protection. The emergence of Holly Wheeler as an active participant in supernatural warfare represents the culmination of themes that have woven through Stranger Things since its inception. The transformation of youngest characters from protected innocence to capable heroes, reflecting the series' exploration of how extraordinary circumstances force ordinary people to discover capabilities they never knew existed within their own hearts and minds. Her development from curious child to dimensional traveler marks not just personal growth, but the continuing evolution of the Wheeler family, from typical suburban household to supernatural warrior clan bound together by love and unwavering commitment to protecting each other against impossible Odds. The Wheeler family's collective journey through seasons of supernatural crisis demonstrates how shared trauma can either destroy familial bonds or forge them into something stronger than any individual member could achieve alone. Through isolated effort, Mike's leadership within the party, Nancy's investigative courage in pursuit of dangerous truths, and now Holly's brave acceptance of responsibilities no child should bear, create a legacy of heroism spanning generations, while establishing patterns future families might follow when facing their own encounters with forces beyond human understanding or conventional preparation. The new generation that Holly represents will inherit wisdom gained from studying victories and defeats of those who came before, their understanding of supernatural threats enhanced by access to knowledge previous heroes had to discover through trial and error, often paid for with blood and sacrifice. This accumulated understanding provides advantages earlier generations lacked while creating responsibilities that transcend simple survival to encompass protection of knowledge itself and preparation for threats that may not manifest for years or decades. The passing of heroic responsibility from one generation to the next reflects eternal nature of struggle between forces seeking to preserve individual consciousness and those working to eliminate personal identity through collective absorption or systematic destruction. The work of defending reality against cosmic horror can never be truly completed, but only continued by successive groups of individuals willing to accept burdens that normal life would never require from ordinary citizens content to remain unaware of dangers lurking beyond dimensional boundaries. Holly's potential development of cleric abilities, particularly power to create dimension doors, allowing teleportation to visualize locations, may provide keys to bypassing supernatural defenses and accessing areas protected by entities whose understanding of human psychology makes conventional infiltration impossible. Her innocent nature and lack of previous supernatural exposure might render her invisible to detection systems designed to identify and neutralize experienced psychic operators whose signatures are known to cosmic intelligences monitoring Earth's defensive capabilities. The mathematical symbolism inherent in Holly's role extends beyond simple numerical coincidence to encompass deeper patterns governing heroic action and cosmic balance between order and chaos throughout observable reality. Her position as potential fourth member of Psychic Coalition suggests completion of sacred geometry, underlying victory against forces that view individual consciousness as inefficient allocation of cognitive resources better utilized, serving collective intelligence, spanning galactic distances and temporal scales beyond human comprehension. The cleric archetype that Holly embodies represents divine intervention in conflicts between mortal heroes and cosmic entities, whose power operates on scales traditionally requiring supernatural assistance to counter effectively through conventional means. Her abilities would complement rather than compete with existing psychic talents within the group, providing healing, protection, and dimensional manipulation capabilities that pure telekinetic or illusion-based powers cannot achieve through individual effort alone. The future threats that await this new generation will likely differ significantly from those encountered by original heroes. Cosmic entities having learned from previous defeats and adapted strategies to account for human resistance capabilities demonstrated through successful defense of Earth against interdimensional invasion. The enemies these young heroes face may possess enhanced understanding of human psychology, improved technological resources, and refined manipulation techniques designed to exploit weaknesses revealed through careful study of earlier heroic successes and failures. The children who inherit this legacy will need to develop new forms of cooperation and trust extending beyond traditional friendship bonds to encompass spiritual and psychic connections. Their predecessors never fully explored due to time, constraints, and immediate survival pressures. Their victory against evolved supernatural threats may require forms of unity that transcend individual identity, while preserving essential humanity that makes such sacrifices meaningful rather than simply strategically necessary for species continuation. The institutional memory that grows around Hawkins' supernatural history creates both advantages and vulnerabilities for future defenders of reality against cosmic horror seeking to establish permanent foothold in three-dimensional space. Knowledge of previous encounters provides tactical intelligence and strategic frameworks, but also creates predictable patterns that intelligent enemies can study and counter through improved methodology and enhanced understanding of human behavioral patterns under extreme stress. The legend that emerges from the original party's victories serves dual purposes of inspiration and warning for those who follow in their footsteps through subsequent supernatural crises. Their example demonstrates that cosmic-level threats can be defeated through determination, cooperation, and willingness to sacrifice personal welfare for larger principles, while simultaneously revealing the costs such victories exact from individuals who accept heroic responsibilities beyond normal human expectations or preparation. The government's evolving relationship with supernatural phenomena suggests future generations will operate within framework of official acknowledgement and institutional support that earlier heroes lacked during their isolated struggles against forces most adults refuse to believe existed. This official recognition provides resources and coordination capabilities while creating new forms of oversight and control that might constrain heroic action in ways that prove counterproductive when facing entities that exploit bureaucratic limitations and regulatory delays. The scientific understanding that develops around psychic abilities and dimensional mechanics offers future heroes enhanced comprehension of forces they must confront, while potentially reducing mystery and wonder that provided psychological advantages to earlier generations who approached supernatural threats with creative solutions, unburdened by theoretical limitations. The balance between knowledge and intuition becomes crucial for maintaining effectiveness against enemies who adapt their strategies based on human scientific progress and technological advancement. The expansion of supernatural awareness throughout general population creates new dynamics where heroic action must account for civilian safety on unprecedented scales while managing public fear and potential panic that could destabilize social institutions necessary for coordinated defense efforts. Future heroes inherit responsibility not just for defeating cosmic threats, but for maintaining societal cohesion during crises that reveal fundamental assumptions about reality to be inadequate for describing true nature of existence. The potential for international cooperation in supernatural defense offers possibilities for coordinated resistance against cosmic entities whose scope extends far beyond single nations or regional boundaries, while simultaneously creating vulnerabilities through increased complexity of command structures and potential for infiltration or manipulation of multiple governmental systems by intelligence capable of patient, long-term strategic planning across decades or centuries. The children who follow Holly Wheeler and her generation into supernatural service will inherit a world where boundaries between dimensions have been weakened through repeated breaches, making their defensive responsibilities more complex and demanding than those faced by original heroes who dealt primarily with isolated incursions rather than systematic invasion attempts. The cumulative damage to dimensional barriers creates ongoing vulnerability requiring constant vigilance and regular intervention to prevent gradual erosion of protections separating Earth from realms where individual consciousness faces absorption into collective intelligence. The technological advances that emerge from study of supernatural phenomena provide new tools for heroic action, while creating dependencies that cosmic entities might exploit through manipulation of systems humanity comes to rely upon for defense against interdimensional threats. The balance between technological capability and human agency becomes crucial for maintaining independence necessary for genuine heroic choice rather than automated response to programmed parameters established by forces whose ultimate loyalties remain unknown. The evolution of psychic abilities within human population suggests natural adaptation to supernatural threats through biological processes that enhance species' survival capabilities while potentially creating new forms of vulnerability to entities whose understanding of consciousness, manipulation, exceeds human scientific knowledge by millions of years of development. The children born with enhanced abilities inherit both power and responsibility their parents never possessed, while facing threats specifically designed to exploit new capabilities for purposes serving alien rather than human interests. The legacy institutions that develop around supernatural defense create frameworks for training and supporting future heroes, while establishing traditions and expectations that may prove inadequate when facing evolved threats requiring innovative approaches rather than historical precedents. The tension between institutional knowledge and creative problem-solving becomes central to maintaining effectiveness against enemies who study human responses and develop countermeasures designed to exploit predictable behaviors and standardized procedures. In spaces between generations where wisdom passes from experienced heroes to eager successors, the true nature of heroic responsibility reveals itself not as temporary burden to be endured during crisis, but as permanent commitment to protecting consciousness itself against forces that view individual identity as obstacle to universal harmony achieved through elimination of personal choice and authentic self-expression. The children who inherit this sacred trust carry within themselves hope for humanity's future and determination necessary to ensure that future remains worth preserving through whatever sacrifices cosmic conflict may demand from those brave enough to stand between darkness and light in eternal struggle for soul of reality itself. And so we drift toward the conclusion of our journey through the endless possibilities that await in Stranger Things' final season, our exploration of theories and predictions drawing to its gentle close, like the last notes of a favorite song fading into comfortable silence. The mysteries we have contemplated together, from Henry Creel's tragic transformation to the mathematical precision of love's victory over cosmic horror, from Will's emerging powers to the circular nature of heroic storytelling, exist now in the twilight space between speculation and sleep, where all possibilities remain equally valid and equally beautiful. Like the children of Hawkins, who discovered that the greatest magic lies not in supernatural abilities, but in the bonds that connect human hearts across impossible distances and insurmountable odds. We too find comfort in the shared experience of wondering and dreaming together about futures that may never come to pass, but feel real in the contemplation of them. The theories that have carried us through this nocturnal journey serve not as definitive answers, but as gentle companions, guiding us toward the peaceful rest that awaits beyond the boundaries of conscious thought and analytical speculation. Whether Vecna falls to the mathematical precision of love's equation, 11 plus 8 plus 1 equaling 20 in cosmic calculations that favor cooperation over individual power, remains a question that fades into whispers as sleep approaches like morning mist dissolving before sunrise. Whether Will embraces his role as bridge between worlds, his hybrid nature serving as beacon of hope rather than harbinger of doom, becomes less important than the recognition that his journey mirrors our own search for authentic identity in a world that often demands conformity to expectations we never chose for ourselves. Whether the Mind Flayer reveals its cosmic horror in all its ancient malevolence, intelligence spanning eons, seeking to transform reality itself into collective consciousness that eliminates individual choice, or whether it remains forever mysterious entity dwelling in spaces between dimensions where human understanding cannot penetrate, matters less than our capacity to find courage in face of uncertainties that define existence itself. The flesh wall surrounding Hawkins may conceal construction projects of unimaginable scope, or it may represent nothing more than elaborate illusion designed to misdirect attention from simpler truths hiding in plain sight. The beauty lies not in the answers we might discover, but in the contemplation itself, in the way theories become lullabies that carry us through the night toward peaceful rest, unburdened by need for resolution or certainty. Max's rescue from Vecna's memory palace, through power of music and authentic emotional connection, speaks to universal truth about love's capacity to transcend any barrier when properly channeled through genuine human relationship and mutual support. Whether that rescue occurs in fictional Hawkins or in our own daily struggles against forces seeking to diminish our individual spirits. The sacrificial heroes whose stories we have explored, from Steve Harrington's potential fall from radio tower heights to Hopper's willingness to detonate explosive vest rather than allow Eleven's capture by those who would exploit her gifts, remind us that genuine courage emerges not from special abilities or favorable circumstances, but from simple choice to prioritize others' welfare above personal safety when facing impossible odds. Their examples illuminate path forward for anyone seeking to understand how ordinary people become extraordinary through decisions made in moments when heroism matters more than survival. Holly Wheeler's emergence as active participant in supernatural warfare rather than passive victim requiring rescue reflects broader themes about human potential that reveal themselves when circumstances demand more than we believed ourselves capable of providing. Her journey from innocent child to dimensional traveler mirrors our own capacity for growth when life presents challenges that force us to discover strengths we never knew existed within our own hearts and minds. Let the echoes of 80s synthesizers and warm glow of found family guide you toward tranquil slumber, knowing that somewhere in spaces between dimensions and dreams, between speculation and sleep, the party continues their eternal watch over things that matter most to human consciousness and individual identity. The basement table where it all began waits patiently for their return, dice and character sheets ready for whatever adventures await beyond current crisis. Friendships stronger than any supernatural force they have encountered through seasons of shared trials and mutual support. Sweet dreams from upside down of consciousness, where hope always finds way to light darkness, and love proves stronger than cosmic horror, seeking to eliminate personal choice in favor of collective harmony imposed through manipulation rather than chosen through authentic connection. The theories that have accompanied us through this gentle exploration will continue their work even as we sleep, weaving themselves into dreams where all possibilities remain open, and all endings prove satisfying because they emerge from recognition that journey matters more than destination. When traveling companions make every step worthwhile, through presence and willingness to face unknown together rather than alone, in quiet spaces between waking and sleeping, between individual awareness and collective rest, consciousness drifts like particles floating between dimensions, toward peaceful surrender, to whatever mysteries tomorrow may bring, secure in knowledge that love provides strength sufficient for any challenge, and friendship offers light bright enough to illuminate even deepest darkness that supernatural forces can summon against human spirit, determined to preserve beauty and meaning in world that sometimes seems designed to eliminate, both through patient application of superior intelligence and unlimited temporal resources spanning eternity itself. And so, we drift toward the conclusion of our journey through the endless possibilities that await in Stranger Things' final season. Like the children of Hawkins who discovered that the greatest magic lies not in supernatural abilities but in the bonds that connect us, we too find comfort in the shared experience of wondering and dreaming together. Whether Vecna falls to the mathematical precision of love's equation, whether Will embraces his role as bridge between worlds, whether the Mind Flayer reveals its cosmic horror, these questions fade into gentle whispers as sleep approaches. The beauty lies not in the answers but in the contemplation, in the way theories become lullabies that carry us through the night toward peaceful rest. Let the echoes of 80s nostalgia and the warmth of found family guide you to tranquil slumber, knowing that somewhere in the spaces between dimensions and dreams, between speculation and sleep, the party continues their eternal watch over the things that matter most. Sweet dreams from the upside down of consciousness, where hope always finds a way to light the darkness.